Hello, Alex Tullio.
Hello, Sarah Piper.
So delighted to have you here today, and I'm so excited you're part of our Candid Conversation series. I don't know many people that are more candid than you, Alex. You shoot from the hip, so it's amazing to have you on this program.
I'm so happy to be here. So it's great to chat to you anytime, and I know we're going to have fun chatting about interesting things.
I think so. I would love you to introduce yourself, what you're doing currently, and I guess a snippet of your background, because it's a really interesting foundation of the heritage of your wisdom, I suppose.
Oh, I love that. The heritage of my wisdom. Well, that's good. I might use that. It sounds very impressive. So yeah, thank you. So I have basically had my whole career in corporate, really nearly 25 years, was basically in financial services. So I think I shared with you, I did an arts degree, no idea what I wanted to do, got my first job, which was part-time working with a financial planner. Back then, I was his girl Friday, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I really had no idea about this industry. And then as these things often happen, I worked every day of my corporate career in financial services. So for ages, when I was younger, I didn't really know what I was great at, and I fell into business development roles, and that sort of kept continuing. So very much distribution and business growth theme to my corporate career, and worked at IOOF and Citicorp, and my last corporate role was on the group executive of Bendigo and Adelaide Bank. So I was running a really big portfolio there. So it was the retail and business bank on the exec, which was really interesting from a lot of angles because I'm not a banker. So that was very much about leadership and transformation. That was a $31 billion balance sheet. And then I left corporate probably now just over 2.5 years ago, completely burnt out, which I share a lot because I think it's a really important conversation about expectations and burnout and productivity and all sorts of things I'm sure we'll cover. But I've actually walked away from this massive career. And so that was you can imagine, that was a real inflection point, and started my own business and went through all the joys, as you will understand, of being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, very, very different to being a corporate leader in a lot of ways, and really found my feet there. And so my clients in that world are innovative leaders. So I've got amazing entrepreneurial business owners, I've got senior corporate execs and leaders. The thing that really binds them is that they're looking for growth and transformation, and they're innovators, right? So I help them sort of navigate through how to actually grow in different ways and be more successful. So my passion is absolutely business. And then the other thing that's led me to as well is that financial executive women. So I'm an executive director for FEW. Of course, we need an acronym, of course.
Australia.
And that business I've known for a very long time. Like the founder, Judith, actually, she used to be in recruitment years ago, and we worked out that she'd actually recruited me for one of my first BDM roles 20 plus years ago. Really, how can that be? And so when she founded FEW, it's a member organisation, it's very much for the positive progression of women, and she started it 7.5 years ago, and I was one of the founding advisory board members. So just recently, the next part of my story alongside all that is that, the exec director role with FEW is super exciting, and that's where I'm spending a lot of my time now, building that business and really doing a lot there at the moment. Sorry, I feel like, did I dribble?
That's a beautiful introduction. A beautiful introduction. I love the fact that you have this this executive and sort of life as a corporate executive that's been incredibly valuable to you, and therefore the wisdom that you provide to business owners like myself and leaders in executive roles is very real. It's very learned experience rather than academic, which I have appreciated and I know others do. And I love the fact that you're consulting for yourself and you're providing value through FEW as a mechanism. And FEW, whilst it's got an acronym that talks about financial services, we talked prior to recording this about the fact that it's inclusive of anybody in professional life and has huge value and relevance to people in executive life. It's a live recording. That's clearly why phones go off in the middle of it. So thanks for that introduction. That's awesome. I'm here with the interest of extracting some of your wisdom to help the people in my community. And I'm particularly keen to keep positive through the current chaos that we're all experiencing. I'd love to ask you personally, what has been the best thing about the change of circumstances and the restriction we're all facing? What's been the best thing that you've found that has come out for you personally?
Yes, and I love that. So we've got to have a positive mindset. So I love not commuting. So that's a plus. And I love spending more time. So my dogs are thrilled. My cats, not so much. It's like, why are you still in the house? So I don't know if all you animal people there's one of those hilarious cartoons that's literally, it's got all these dogs around a boardroom table saying, yes, the plan's come off, and the cat's at the head of the table going, why wasn't I consulted? Anyway, there's a bit of an insight. So I'm loving that. So I think there's a bit more time for reflection. I think from a business perspective, the interesting thing has been, so I literally stepped into this business, the Few business, the week of lockdown.
Right.
And, you and I were chatting about, we've all got a decision to make, whether we can bunker down or take positive action. So the thing that I'm loving about this is it's actually forced us to supercharge the strategy that we'd planned to kind of have over the next 18 months to bring it to fruition right now. So I relish that sort of thing. But so I do enjoy, and I'm quite a homebody, so I quite like being in my space and, having that. But
yeah. You're seeing all the boxes behind me, Alex. We are moving house in 2 weeks, which is normally a pretty painful experience. Moving house, it's nobody's fun activity. But the fact that we've had such forced lockdown, we've really organised, we've decluttered, we're feeling totally cleansed on that basis. There's definitely upside, personally. And I think it's interesting. I'm going to talk to you about productivity, and I was going to do it the other way around, but I'm actually going to start there. Because you mentioned how you supercharged your digitization of the Few organization and some of the things that you were going to take time to roll out. So it's almost like a paradox, because I think productivity is really being affected by the environment we're being forced to be in. It's distracting, the environment we're in, particularly if you've got young children around. Psychologically, the uncertainty can get you distracted and make you feel distracted. But it's also, in total contrast, requiring people to be really, really proactive and accelerate things that might have taken longer. I'd love to understand your view and your counsel around productivity and why there is such a paradox, and how, and I guess the question to you is, what counsel would you give to people around productivity and the fact that it is so volatile?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so there's a lot there. So where will I start with that? So I have a theory. And my theory is this, that all the challenges that we're faced with at the moment, and as we know, I mean, we're humans, so you and I've already talked about it, it's a roller coaster. So that's the first thing, is we are so hard on ourselves around, it's got to be a certain way. So we are all in completely different situations. We've got different stuff on in the background. I'm sure we've all met kids, partners walking past, pets, the whole thing. It's just how we're... So we're on this emotional and energetic roller coaster. So that's the first thing. But I've got this theory that the challenges that we face, especially as leaders and business owners, they were actually already there, but this situation is amplified. So to bring it to your question about, I think, productivity, what I'm seeing a lot of, and to give everyone the context, so right now my head is right in this space with this financial executive women group. So to give you an idea, we've basically gone live. We're live streaming 4 days a week. We're doing super cool stuff. But because of that, we're hearing lots and lots and lots and lots of professionals from the whole gamut and business owners thematically talking about the same things. My days are now more elastic ended than ever, like they're 15 hours plus. Okay. I feel guilty that I'm not doing enough because I've got distractions at home, therefore I keep doing more. The days are blurred into each other because the laptop's always there, the computer's there, so the weekends are now, I've got no boundaries. Mm-hmm. They're talking about that they've got a bigger to-do list than ever before. So the reason why I'm sharing this is I just think it's fascinating. It's not a particular person or demographic, like everyone, and it's not just women either. Mm. So my counsel, there's a few things there. So I say even pre-COVID, busyness, it's that epidemic and that curse that we all suffer from. So I'm focusing on this 80-20 rule, which is, what are the things that are really going to have the biggest impact? Because we can all write a to-do list with 1,000 things on it and we'll never get to it. And all that does is we get to the end of the night, beat ourselves up because we haven't done anything, we haven't done it well, and then we start again with that already as the boulder on our back in the morning. So that's the first thing I'd say to everyone is, you've got to have boundaries. You have got to have boundaries and structure your day. Certainly for me, I do talk quite a bit about, I get up early and I still do exercise, and I do the things that I would have done if I was getting up to go to work, even though I'm coming into my home office. Because if I don't do that, it's very easy to then get into the abyss almost of, oh God, you know. So I think definitely batch and structure your day in a way that works for you. Embrace the environment. So if you're homeschooling, if you've got all this stuff, yes, don't try and put everything on top of that. So what works? Is it a schedule with the kids? Is it half an hour on and off? Is it doing a couple of hours early morning, whatever? But then in terms of your priorities, what's really important? What's the filler stuff? Because we are all addicted to busyness, and especially if you're leading teams, that will then, the ripple effect of that busyness will keep going. So productivity, there's actually, that's why productivity, I think, will decrease from that perspective. So it's what's the outcome, not the amount of input.
Totally. I think being realistic around productivity is having a realistic view around the context that you're currently in, potentially 2 adults in your home with competing priorities and potentially commitments outside of just work. Being realistic and also being kind to yourself. You cannot do everything, like you were saying. You can't pile on the responsibilities and the priorities one above the other. It's a surefire way to drive yourself bonkers. And I think in my experience, the first couple of weeks, not only was I wrestling the financial reality of pressure and uncertainty of my business, but I was also panicking around, how is my daughter going to catch up? How's it all going to work? And since those first few weeks, which were pretty clunky and not perfect, I have learned that structure, so your counsel around structure, is vital. I think having purpose to your day, and that purpose would be a combined purpose of family outcomes and professional outcomes, and making those expectations really realistic. So yes, absolutely being outcome based rather than input based, but also just being really, really fair and reasonable, making sure that you interject mental health breaks, dog walks, making sure that it's not all one-dimensional. Otherwise, that balance that you've worked so hard to try and achieve, which our normal structure allows for because we're used to it, is just totally eradicated and your mental health suffers. And I think a lot of us, when we first experienced the lockdown and restrictions and the economic impacts of those, just went into fight or flight mode, and that kind of fight or flight mode is not a good place to work from. You don't get your best output from fight or flight. It's fear-based, and I think if you have an opportunity just to take stock and plan and structure and look after yourself and prioritize moments of self-care, the output around productivity is increased. Yes,
and I'd almost even say, let's just chuck out the word productivity.
Yeah.
We want outcomes, right?
Yeah.
But it puts so much pressure, and it's got all those connotations that we know. So I think you're right, and this is being in that adrenaline response of that fight or flight. One, it's exhausting.
Totally.
Right? It's completely exhausting, and I know one of the challenges that I'm hearing a lot about is whether it's kids or I've a team and I'm trying to check in on other humans and make sure other people and partners, like everyone is going through this. If we don't look after our own mindset and our energy, it's that old thing about putting your oxygen mask. Like, that's not new, but it is more important than ever now. We have to. And I think, yes, be realistic. And that goes for, we've had a lot of, leaders say, well, how do I know that the team's doing what they should be? Because now I can't see them. Micromanaging, not the answer. So, and this is kind of what I was saying before about, there are challenges that were there already, and this is just amplifying.
It's exacerbated it, yes, for sure.
It's exacerbating. So this is about, well, you've got to trust your team. And then if you're having meetings, what you said, what's the purpose? So one, what's the purpose in the day? But for every interaction that you have, if you're having a team meeting, for example, or a family meeting, whatever, what's the purpose? What's the outcome, as you say, Sarah? What are people working toward? Like, trust people will do the job, and also know that they're in a different environment. I think this is the thing we're learning.
Bit of kindness, love it. I'd love to talk about the point in which things start to return to normal. So when business starts to return to more normal, I've already started to see some green shoots, which is wonderful. And so, and clearly Australia, in terms of battling its health crisis, it's going well, and things are looking comparatively to other countries. I'm so grateful for being in this country. So it's only a matter of time before restrictions change and are lessened and relaxed, and therefore the economy slowly but surely starts to return to some semblance of normal. Because leaders in business, whether that be SMB businesses or large corporate, have been in crisis mode, have been, what do we now need to do right now to get through this hell? They may well have let other things slide. Putting your hat back on around being in that executive leadership role, what are things that you would advise that people don't lose sight of, so they can come back to some economical health when the time comes? What are the things that we shouldn't be forgetting about right now?
It's a great question, and like you, I'm already there is, I think, there's a shift, and because as humans we normalize, right? So we had that, oh my God, this can't be happening, what's happening? And I think we still, like we've talked about, we go in and out of that. But from a business perspective, I'm certainly seeing corporates start to say, okay, well, we can't just then, it's gone from, don't talk to me now because there's a crisis on, this is all we can deal with, battening down the hatches, to what's next. So I think there's a few things. So with my exec leader hat on, you've got to look to the future. So this is one of the things about leading a business, is we've got to balance the tactical with, and because there's stuff we're reacting to, the tactical now, but also with that strategic thinking. So what I would be saying to leaders is, where do you want to be when we come out of this? Because if there's one thing that's true, whatever normal goes back to, it won't ever be the same. So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff about, what will work look like? What have we taken from this? I mean, we speak to some pretty big business leaders who are saying, we've literally put the whole workforce working remotely in 3 days. If we tried to do this pre-COVID, it would have taken 12 months of steering committees, risk, people not getting on board. So I think there's something interesting.
That's fascinating. That is fascinating.
Just think about it. So you're right, we're in a crisis. We have no choice. We have to go remote. We have to go digital. We can't meet. All these things, you look at, lots of big corporates, how they're looking after their members, their customers, their staff. All this stuff is possible, and it hasn't caved in. Like, the wheels haven't fallen off. And I find it fascinating because financial services, where, I spend, professional services, tends to be quite conservative, It tends to be, well, we can't do this because we're accountants, or we're, we're a bank, or we're, a super fund. It's very weighty stuff that we deal with.
Yes.
But it's happened, and it's happening. So I think from a leader perspective, part of the role is that you've got to be future thinking. Where do you want to be when we start to come out of this? What's going to put you ahead of the curve? And they're simple things I think of. Is what am I, whatever's relevant, what are my customers or my clients or my partners, my stakeholders, my staff, that community for the business, what do they need? What do they need, and how can we best serve them, and where's the opportunity? And I think if you can balance that, and then also, I mean, these are again tried and true, but transparency and communication, so important. Like, we get a lot of questions about, can I over communicate? I firmly believe no.
So
I'm so passionate about this, because I think the leaders that are really shining in business, community, wherever, are the ones that are saying, you know what, this is a reality. This is what we're doing. They're accessible. Their staff can get to them. Last week, I was chatting to Renato Motta, who's the CEO of IOOF, and he's a brilliant leader. He does a live stream with his staff. They have over 1,000 people every Monday, and you hear his staff speak about him, and they say, it's great because we can ask anything. And if he doesn't have the answer, he says, I don't have the answer. But he's a really good example of he's looking at people. How can I serve our customers? They've got a lot of financial planners and all that sort of stuff. But also, what are the things we're learning? Technology, strategy. What do we think we could do that we've just done? What don't we want to go back to?
Yeah, that's it. It's fascinating from a talent perspective, which is my domain. Organisations pre-COVID that would have looked at flexibility as a competitive advantage and part of their employer branding proposition that some organisations would flag as a real differentiator. If you're not able to celebrate and support flexibility in work as an employer proposition, it's over. And so I think keeping it real and as you've talked about, within 3 days, large organisations and institutions that normally would have taken a long time have now managed to make this happen. And so I think understanding what needs to be the differentiator post-COVID, because that can no longer be it. That needs to be a baseline of expectation. So understanding what value proposition you need to embed in your employer proposition to have competitive advantage. There are going to be an awful lot of, obviously there are a huge amount of people impacted, huge amount of people displaced through redundancies and employment being so affected. And so it seems like it's going to be a hiring market, but to get the best talent, you've still got to be absolutely on your game and understanding what your competitive edge is. And it needs to be thought about. Right now to ensure.
Yes, 100%. Yes, you would hear probably more than I would, but you know, I think it's that sense of the bunkering down versus the positive action. I think now's the time, from a talent perspective. So as an employer as well as a prospective employee, because I also hear a lot of our members say, oh, well, you know, I think, should I put it on hold? And now's not. No, now is the time, because the majority of people are stepping back. So I think those that are, you know, thinking forward, like you're saying, so from a talent perspective, what do we want to be known for? What can we do? And I think, I mean, you would see a lot of this as well, but I think it's fascinating about seeing what skills are lacking. Like, I think the tide's really gone out, and you're finding that, you know, leaders are struggling with managing remote teams and pivoting fast and changing the way they do things because they can only think this way and it's got to be perfect. That rigidity, we're never going to go back to that. Yeah. So I would also be thinking, as you're saying, about from a talent perspective, what have we found that we're lacking in terms of the way our people problem solve and think, and the kind of talent that we attract, and who's really shone and what's really worked for us? Like that's really interesting stuff. I think that, as you say, you know, employers should be thinking about now.
Yeah, and it's a funny thing to be thinking about how you're going to hire differently when everyone's being impacted in the reverse around displacement and redundancies. But this is the time to do some thinking around it and some proactive planning around what skills and characteristics are you lacking, to your point, and how can you plan to acquire those post-COVID or post-restrictions. Fascinating stuff to actually get right now. There's a bit of room to think about things. Thank you so much, Alex, for your time today and for your insights. We'll make sure that on the written documentation that accompanies this video that there's contact details and people who want to reach out and access your consulting and coaching, which is invaluable, will have access to that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been loads of fun.
Cheers.